coming up with original ideas is hard, which is why this channel is going to be pivoting to FIFA Ultimate Team pack opening videos. Wait, they cost how much? Alright, forget it. We're going back to listing things. As I say, coming up with original ideas can be hard, which is why it can be tempting to just take an existing idea and improve on it. And if no one has ever heard of the original thing you're ripping off, even better, because then it looks like you came up with it in the first place. It's a flawless plan. Here then are 7 famous original games that might not be as original as you thought. Enjoy.
The Super Smash Bros. Series of fighting games is famous for a few things, most notably having an incredible lineup of fighters from across some of gaming's most beloved franchises, and also somehow still not having Waluigi as a playable fighter. What the hell?
You can KO assist trophies by inflicting damage, and now you get points for it too.
But a big part of Smash Bros. Appeal is its gameplay, in which your chosen fighters chase each other down across large, multi-level stages that the level zooms to give you a good look at, while you avoid environmental hazards and use weaponry that you find lying around to do extra damage to your foes. Which, it must be said, is a pretty spot-on description of Namco arcade game The Outfoxies, which came out in 1994, a full 5 years before Super Smash Bros. Debut on the N64. In The Outfoxies, you play as one of 7 assassins who have been hired to kill the other 6 by a shadowy figure named Mr. Acme. The assassins include formerly conjoined twins, a washed-up movie starlet and her pet lizard, and a chimp in a top hat named Dweeb.
Your next target is Dweeb. I offer you 800,000 Twitch friends to eliminate him.
Dweeb for Smash, you cowards! Like Smash Bros., combat in the Outfoxies takes place across expansive levels with plenty of platforming needed to get around stages as diverse as a cargo plane in flight, a speeding train, and a circus mid-show. And each stage is littered with environmental hazards and weapons for you to pick up and use on your opponent.
Boy.
Oh no!
There you go. 1.
Sadly, the Outfoxies was largely ignored on release due to the rise of 3D fighters at the time and the fact that the market was dominated by Capcom and SNK. But there's no denying that it invented many of the features that would go on to be the cornerstones of platform fighters such as Smash Bros. And the recent Multiversus. And how many of those games feature a chimp in a top hat firing a mounted machine gun at people? Exactly.
League. It's football, but with cars and flips and explosions, and it's as many times more exciting than actual football as that makes it sound. In Rocket League, 2 teams of cars do battle on a pitch bordered by ramps that let you drive up the walls. The objective is to nudge the ball into your opponent's net, scoring what we in the biz call a goal. Though you can have a lot of fun just smashing into each other, the ball, or what have you, the cars can also jump, double jump, flip, drift and boost, giving you way more precision than you'd expect from a rocket-powered battle car. More amazing still, Rocket League is also not the first super fast car football game, and no, I'm not talking about Rocket League developer Psyonix's previous game, 2008 PS3 game, Supersonic Acrobatic Rocket-Powered Battle Cars, one hell of a title though that is. No, the first game to do that was in fact 1991's Wild Wheels for the Atari ST, which was a game where 2 teams of cars did battle on a pitch bordered by ramps that let you drive up the walls, where the objective was to nudge the ball into your opponent's net and score a goal. Sounds familiar? Given that there aren't very many ways that you can do football but with cars, Wild Wheels is inevitably extremely similar to Rocket League, with all of the later game's chaos, jockeying for position, and occasional, usually accidental, goal scoring. It even has the explosions. Rocket League has now sold over 40 million copies, however, whereas Wild Wheels is mostly forgotten. Although that might be thanks to what I think may be one of the worst title screens of all time. say he's still doing that to this day.
It's difficult to imagine a world before the Call of Duty series. Difficult, but rewarding. It's one of the biggest video game franchises on the planet, shifting millions of copies, and the release of each game is a huge multimedia event. You can't even enjoy a bottle of Mountain Dew without being confronted with a double XP promotion. You can't enjoy a bottle of Mountain Dew anyway because it's got Mountain Dew in it, but that's beside the point. The very first Call of Duty game arrived in 2003 from developer Infinity Ward and was instantly celebrated as a brilliant cinematic first-person shooter. While the first game was set in World War II, those spectacular campaign set pieces are still in evidence in 2022 in the Modern Warfare 2 remake. Graphics are just slightly better though. The truth is though, the Call of Duty formula was established by a series that has since been all but forgotten, Medal of Honor. The series' last entry was the disappointing Medal of Honor Warfighter in 2012, and it is effectively dead now. Back in 2002 though, the series announced itself with the Saving Private Ryan-inspired PS2 game Medal of Honor Frontline. That game's cinematic opening, recreating the chaos and brutality of the Omaha beach landings, set the formula for the genre going forward. You won't be at all surprised to hear that all of the 22 founding members of Infinity Ward had worked on the PC version of that game, which was called Medal of Honor Allied Assault. After that project, they left EA, set up on their own with Activision as a publisher, and the genre-dominating Call of Duty series was born. They only changed 2 of the 3 words in the title though. Come on Infinity Ward, at least try and make it subtle.
While it's no longer the unstoppable cultural juggernaut it was a few years ago, 2009's Angry Birds is still one of the most successful video games of all time, generating over $1 billion of revenue and inspiring, among other things, movies, TV shows, and even theme parks. The premise of the game is simple. You control a catapult into which is loaded one of the titular Furious Fowl. Across the level from you are various flimsy structures containing spherical green pigs, and your job is to launch that irate avian into the structure to kill the pigs. Simple. Simple and undeniably familiar if you happen to play a Flash game released earlier the same year called Crush the Castle. Set in medieval times, Crush the Castle had you flinging rocks at various flimsy structures, trying to knock them down to kill the enemy soldiers within. You were in control of a trebuchet, not a catapult, but the basic premise is exactly the same. The problem with Crush the Castle is that it was a hard-to-find Flash game, it looked drab and uninteresting, it didn't feature cute bird characters, and crucially, you couldn't play it on your phone while waiting in line at the post office. Still, as far as rip-offs go, this is pretty egregious. I'm not Angry Birds, I'm just disappointed birds.
Captain Wesker, where's Chris?
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But Chris is...
What is it? Maybe it's Chris.
When the original Resident Evil released on the PlayStation back in 1996, it defined the survival horror genre, with its terrifying story, nightmare-fuel visuals, and truly horrifying voice acting.
Jill, what's going on? Any clues?
No, but something's wrong with this house.
Whoa, this hall is dangerous. Maybe it's better to secure our escape route first.
Its story of a team of people stranded in a creepy mansion filled with monsters was a huge hit, and Resident Evil went on to become one of the biggest franchises in gaming, with dozens of games, comic books and movies to its name, some of which are even good. Not that one. So it may come as something of a shock to find out that the first Resident Evil isn't as original as you might think. In fact, it's a pretty major rip-off of a 1989 Famicom game called Sweet Home, also made by Resident Evil publisher Capcom. Sweet Home, you play as a team of filmmakers exploring a creepy mansion full of monsters in search of hidden frescoes. Although Sweet Home looks different thanks to the technical limitations of the Famicom system, a lot of the trademarks of Resident Evil and the survival horror genre in general are here, including the emphasis on survival, the limited inventory space, slowly unlocking more of the house by finding keys, a story told partially through discovering notes, and most tellingly of all, interminably slow animations of doors opening. Of all the things to keep, they went with that. Sweet Home even included features that didn't make it into the Resident Evil series until Resident Evil 0 in 2002, such as being able to switch between characters at will or drop items on the ground for retrieving later. A couple of things prevented Sweet Home from being more famous and acknowledged as the great granddaddy of survival horror. For one, Sweet Home was an adaptation of a movie, and once the PlayStation era rolled around, Capcom no longer had the rights, so had to come up with a new story instead of just updating Sweet Home. And secondly, Sweet Home only came out in Japan, meaning that when Western audiences encountered Resident Evil, it was the first time they'd ever experienced anything like it, which led to its massive popularity.
Oh, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
In spite of the voice acting, yes.
Inarguably the most iconic first-person shooter game of all time, Doom is to the FPS genre what the Big Mac is to the McDonald's menu. Only with more processed meat, somehow. No, I do not want fries with that. While the single-player experience of Doom was second to none when it chainsawed its way onto the scene in 1993, developer id Software had already struck solo FPS gold the previous year with Wolfenstein 3D, an FPS that had most of the major ingredients of Doom and saw you single-handedly winning World War II. Tell a lie, that gun would definitely require two hands. The real key to Doom's longevity beyond that of Wolfenstein was that it introduced the world to the concept of deathmatch, competitive multiplayer first-person combat across a computer network. This deathmatch concept, popularised by Doom, felt revolutionary at the time, and the fact that the term deathmatch is still used by almost every multiplayer first-person shooter to this day can be directly traced back to Doom's contribution to the genre. But it wasn't the first game to offer true, networked, multiplayer competitive first-person shooting. That honour goes to Midi Maze, 6 years earlier in 1987. Midi Maze was an Atari ST game that allowed up to 16 machines to be connected for FPS deathmatches by the MIDI ports that came as standard on the back of every Atari ST computer. These MIDI ports were designed to allow you to connect musical instruments such as keyboards for use in software like the original Cubase, but were instead co-opted by Midi Maze to allow players controlling giant smiley faces to shoot each other. I imagine that's what burnt-out late 80s ravers see when they close their eyes. Midi Maze's innovative use of technology designed for music production was referenced not just in the less than inspiring title of the game, but also in the otherwise seemingly random inclusion of a musical stave to track who had the most kills in the match. Bizarre, given that you don't often associate music with murder. Well, unless you've heard me murder Don't Stop Believin' at karaoke. Life sentence, no chance of parole.
When you say city building game, people's minds immediately go to the cities that they built in SimCity, and then those cities being destroyed by Godzilla when they got bored. But while you'd be forgiven for thinking that the original SimCity, released in 1989, was the first game to come up with the idea of letting you build your own city and then run it into the ground, there was in fact another game with a very similar premise that came out a staggering 7 years earlier. Did they even have video games then? I mean, looking at that, I'm still not sure. This is Utopia, a 1982 game for the Mattel Intellivision, the first city-building game, and arguably the first ever real-time strategy game. Made for 2 players, you each have control of an island and have to plant crops, construct different buildings, and can even fund rebel activity on your opponent's island to undermine their attempts at success. It had randomly generated weather events like rain clouds and hurricanes, shoals of fish for your fishing boats to catch, and PT boats that you could send out to sink your opponent's fishing boats to stop them making any of that sweet fishing money. At the end of the round, the player with the best island would win and be rewarded with a slightly different sound effect because this was 1982. While Utopia had a lot of good ideas, it was obviously quite ahead of its time and held back by a horrible control scheme and interface and graphics that looked like the carpet after your dog got sick from eating too much Lego. That's why it took another 7 years for SimCity to come along and perfect the format, establishing a whole new genre when it did. Plus, no Godzilla in Utopia, so you can see why it's lost to history now, along with Andyville. R.I.P.
Thank you so much for watching this video brought to you by outsidexbox. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. It really genuinely does help us out. We don't just ask this at the end for the good of our health, I suppose. If you'd like to watch more videos, more wonderful, original, brilliant videos, we've got one up here from us and one from our sister channel, Outside Extra. And if you really want to support what we do, why don't you join the OX Supporters Club over at patreon.com/OXClub. The link's down there as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.